I just recently met somebody and he shared, and I met him sort of on a live online chat, and I shared about how I've really suffered and struggled a lot. And he reached out to me and said that he has too, and that he's actually now grateful for the suffering, grateful in a sense, because it's led him to the spiritual life. And I just resonate so deeply with that because of the level of suffering I've been through. And I like to estimate, and I estimate that in the last 30 years, like 65% of every waking moment was spent in intense misery and suffering. And sometimes I think that's a low estimate. Sometimes I think it's more like 70, 75. There's been bad years where it's been like 85%, like of every waking moment spent in misery. Like, I don't know how I'm still alive. I've almost unalived myself multiple times. But because of this level of suffering, I literally can't make any person, place, or thing my number one. Like, I have to make the spiritual path my number one. And there's been times where I've been resentful about that. And and the truth is, living excuse me, living a spiritual life is the most satisfying. Like, I've had lots of intense, wonderful sex. Like, I've explored many, many different varieties of sex. I mean, it's kind of an infinite exploration. I'm not saying I've done it all, but I've been around that block. I've done various plant medicines. Uh, I've pretty much done everything except to get married and have kids. Owned businesses, written a book, traveled, done volunteer work. Uh, you know, I've been around the block, and so in many ways, I feel like I've experienced, jumped out of an airplane. Like, I've experienced everything other than get married and have kids. And I can say that the spiritual life of, when I define the spiritual life of like being connected to the divine and loving the divine and serving creation, and is the highest, most satisfying way of life. It's not the highest pleasure, like, of course, an intense sexual experience or an intense experience on a plant medicine, um, or a really amazing dance is intoxicating. And I cherish those moments. Uh, but in terms of like the deepest satisfaction, it's this sense of wholeness and completion that comes, with a deep meditation, deep prayer, doing service, being in nature and communing. Like, that wholeness, that feeling of completion. There's nothing like it. And because all the suffering I've been through, like, I've been forced to seek that out. I've been forced, suffering has forced me to seek solutions. And that's what suffering does is, people who don't suffer a lot, they can just do what they do. They don't have to investigate. They don't have to seek solutions. They can just have a job, get married, like, live, quote, the normal life. And I'm not saying that's bad. And I'm not saying I'm better than those people. But what I am saying is that suffering is horrible. It sucks, but it is also a blessing because it's forced me, and it forced this brother who wrote out to me, and it forces anyone who suffers to seek something above and beyond. As the guy who wrote to me, he said, the people who didn't suffer, who had a rosy life, like, they didn't have to go down this path. They didn't have to seek the way he did, the way I did. So, the way, and it's also led me to rely on God, and even to trust source. It's been hard to trust in a higher power given how much I've suffered. It's like, why? like help, and then pain and anger when the help didn't come as quickly as I wanted or the way I wanted. But as I've matured a little bit and as I've survived all this suffering, because again, it's almost I've almost unalived myself multiple times and wanted to, probably tens of thousands of times, wanted to unalive myself. Having survived this and matured a little bit, I'm starting to see that all of it is part of a divine plan to strip me of my attachments, to get down to the essence. Like, what is the essence of life? What's really important? And had I not suffered all this way, and I'm going to say if God hadn't led me down this path, then I wouldn't have done this exploration. And having experienced almost all the positives that life can offer, and having experienced hell on earth, I can tell you what really matters to me, and that is connection to the divine. That is helping other people. That's having real, genuine, authentic connections with another person. The kind of connection where you feel uplifted, where you uplift others and they uplift you. Synergistic connections. And yes, and then of course, then the treats of life. Like I just woke up and my cat was like waiting out my door, and just for like 10 minutes, I just loved on her and petted her. And those sweet moments are then become so sweet. But they no longer, it used to be like, it's like everything was like my plan for happiness. Like, oh, if I go to the beach, or oh, I go pet my cat, or oh, if I go dance. And now those things are becoming like secondary. But they become even more sweet because I'm not attached to them in the way I used to be. And I can just savor and enjoy and appreciate them. As someone who has felt doomed, to go have, and right now I'm doing really good. Like I'm having a good week, having a good day and a good week. The 10 minutes of loving my kitty cat is just so precious. Then the little things become somehow bigger when I'm not attached to them, and I just savor them and then seek to stay connected to the divine. Like, it's written, Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. And I believe that's what he meant or part of what he meant is seek the divine first. And then all these other things will fall into place, but also all the other things actually become more precious and more sweet.